Hey y'all, Southern Sleuth here, back with another fake lore video. There was so much positive feedback from my first fake lore video, Secrets Can Kill, that I felt it was time to do another one. This time, we are exploring the 7th game in the series, Nancy Drew Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake. If you have befriended me at all, you probably know that this is my absolute favorite game in the series and has been since it came out. No game has topped this for me, and now I don't think it can, because now the nostalgia factor has set in, and a new game won't be able to compete with that. If you're new to my channel, hi! I'm obsessed with Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake. Why? It was the first game I ever completed without hints, and because it has doggies, and I have a healthy attachment to animals. It also is still really the only game that I can basically walk through my head the whole way. I mean, I can see what you need to do next. Alright, before I get too deep, let's get into some spoiler warnings. First of all, this video will clearly have spoilers for Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake. So if you haven't played it all the way through, I highly suggest skipping this video and waiting for the next one. My other warning is that this is fake lore. Plenty of it will not match up, and you can debunk it. I will try to make it fit into the actual gameplay because it makes it more fun and plausible that way, but part of the enjoyment of the fake lore is that I can get a little weird with it. Not really a spoiler warning, but just wanted to explain what's going on here. If either of those things make you hesitate to watch the video, now is your time to go. You can go back and watch some of my other videos, or you can go check out a different YouTuber. Leave this video in 3, 2, 1. Let's get sleuthin', y'all. The fun part about fake lore is that it doesn't all have to work together. I can give a piece of fake lore about how the dogs are actually cats, and then give another piece of fake lore that all the dogs are actually animatronics controlled by none other than Lulu from Curse of Blightmoor Manor herself. So let me start off this video by giving a piece of lore with tiny spoilers from Secrets Can Kill. Nothing heavy. When we arrive at Moon Lake, Sally is not there. She leaves us a message on the door explaining how she was too freaked and just had to get out of there and will call us, Nancy, from the car phone. After you arrive, it takes no time at all for the house phone to ring. You can't even get a single click in before the phone starts up. So how did Sally know that you had just arrived in the door? I have 2 theories to this. Here's my tiny Secrets Can Kill spoiler, which if you've watched that video, it will make sense. It's just Jake Rogers. There's no Sally, it was Jake all over again. So he's watching us from the beginning because we're basically a reality show and Nancy just doesn't know she's the star of it. Number 2, Sally is actually the one running the cameras, and that's how she knows exactly when Nancy arrives. But that begs the question, is it also Sally's fault that a tree falls and blocks Nancy in? And then that begs the question, why would Sally do that? Have Nancy come out to the house, spy on her, and block her so she can't leave? I've actually got a good theory, but I think I'm going to save that for a later video. Since this is our fake lore, we can just say that Sally really loves dogs and wanted to find out if these dogs were actually ghost dogs, feral, or if they were super friendly and she could adopt them. And I think we all know how that one turned out. It also explains why her phone goes dead and she never actually calls Nancy back. If you are still trying to convince Nancy to leave, wouldn't you immediately be calling her back the minute you get service again, not waiting for her to call you? Moving on from Sally and all my theories about her, let's talk about Red Knott for a bit. I love me a good grumpy character. The strong, mostly silent type if you will, if you don't count his weird owl noises right outside of Sally's cabin in the middle of the night. He claims to know that it is a young single lady living inside that cabin and that she's been made fearful by dogs attacking her house. So if you're a decent person, why would you risk scaring her further by making creepy noises outside her house in the middle of the night? Listen, I'm not a seasoned bird watcher by any stretch of the imagination. If you want a bird expert, you got some choices. You can go talk to E. Mullen Streams for all of your bird expertise, ND Crafts for ducks, and Loose Goose Games for geese, clearly. All those are actually Nancy Drew streamers that you should go follow, by the way. They all have YouTube accounts, also Twitch accounts. Even though I'm not a bird watcher, I do know that most bird watchers are out during the day. While it may make sense that Red is out for a little while at night to catch an owl or two, it doesn't make sense that we can never find him during the day when the other types of birds are out. I mean, would he not want to see the daytime birds common to Moon Lake? Speaking of birds common to Moon Lake, and speaking of Emolin streams, Emols has a video talking about how some of the birds that show up in this game would be unlikely to be at Moon Lake during the spring, which is when the game takes place, even though my head sees it as a fall game. Is it possible that instead of just being your average bird watcher, Red Knott is actually some sort of insane bird person who is capturing birds from other territories and bringing them to Moon Lake to mess with the entire ecosystem? I mean, if there are a bunch of extra birds flying around that maybe shouldn't be there this time of year, that could explain why Emily needs us to find some critters. They might be running scarce on account of all them extra birds snacking away on the critters. Rough theory, but you know, this is fake lore. Don't be too harsh on it. In addition to possibly being a very, very strange bird relocator man who only comes out at night, vampire bird watcher? You cannot convince me that Red Knott has not at least tried to flirt with Emily. She talks about how he took every single piece of sandpaper and a few other things from her, but he's just sitting on one little seat cushion. So why did he need that much sandpaper if he's just going to sit on a cushion anyways? Maybe he was trying to go to that emporium to flirt a little. He also leaves his cassette player there. Could be an excuse to come back. It would explain why he's gone so much during the day. He can't go visit Emily while the shop's closed. But let's go a little deeper and stick with me on this one. Just stick with me. Okay, so you know, or a lot of us know, that Red Knott is a type of bird. What are the actual odds that his family's last name was Knott, and they just happened to look down at their probably bald baby boy and decided to name him Red, like he is straight out of the Pokemon games? Instead, bear with me, it makes way more sense that Red Knott is actually a fake name. And maybe, just maybe, going back to the fact that he's wanting to see birds that aren't really common in that region in the spring means maybe he's not quite the avid bird watcher. I mean, maybe he is the average bird watcher, I don't know. But that we think he is, and maybe, I'm saying maybe a lot, just maybe, he is in the witness protection program, and whoever had to come up with his alias was really obsessed with, you know, those young adult fantasy novels where the names of the characters usually indicate something about their interests, powers, or futures. Like the girl named Violet has purple eyes, and it turns out she's a lost princess, you know, or somebody has, think like Percy Jackson. You know, characters have names that can sometimes depict what's going to happen to them. So, Red Knott's real name is Tobias Williams. Doesn't he look like a Tobias? What does he look like to you? Let me know in the comments. But this means that the birds he knows are just the ones from his witness protection program briefing, and he just sits outside at night because he's incredibly paranoid that the dogs are actually coming for him. So he sits in the tree so he can see from all angles without really being seen himself, and the sandpaper was the closest thing to a weapon he could find at Emily's store. And that dog, Ruth, that he talks about, it's a lie. Ruth is his handler's name, and she almost had a come apart when Tobias used her name in giving himself a fake dog. Then why did he ask us to take pictures of birds, you ask? Because birds are spies. Duh. They're just drones trying to find him, and he needs to know how close they are. I bet you thought I lost it when I started this line of fake lore, right? But now you're starting to come around to the idea, and you're starting to think this might not be fake at all, right? Well, don't let Tobias hear you say that you know his secret, or he'll have to move again. Why is he in witness protection, you ask? I can't tell you that. I already ruined it enough letting you know his real name is Tobias. The birds are listening. Okay, let's move on from Tobias before he gets too suspicious that we've caught on. Leela, we're done talking about Tobias. I mean, at the end of the day, he does like Moon Lake, and he doesn't want to move on to another location. He might never figure out what a Strixvaria is if he moves on. Next on my hit list of fake lore is good old Em herself. We find out she's been at Moon Lake for like 10 years or so, based on some of the conversations we've had with her, or I would guess at least 10 years. And she seems to know everyone around those parts. At the beginning of the game, she offers to get Tucker Davis to come out and get that tree for Nancy. But Tucker doesn't come out until the end of the game. Which, to be fair, she does warn us he can take a while. But who is Tucker Davis, and why is he so busy? He's clearly got to be Sally's partner. He's been taking care of those dogs while she runs the shop. How else do you explain no poop in their pen when Nancy finds them? Clearly, Emily has some help. If Emily has some help, though, and only Emily got caught, that means that Tucker Davis is still out there. Especially if he did indeed cut that tree away at the end. I was trying to remember if there was any unexplained actions against Nancy, but I couldn't come up with any that weren't kind of explained away. So we can just agree that Tucker and Emily just split them up half and half. Tucker poisoned the water, Emily set the shed on fire, teamwork. However, what does that mean happened to Tucker Davis after Emily got arrested? Well, it is logical to assume he had to lay low for a while. As long as Emily wasn't too bitter about being caught and told on Tucker and told him to take a flying leap, it's totally possible that she and Tucker linked back up once he got out of jail sometime between 2003 and 2006. My guess is she got out early on probation for good behavior by, bribing somebody with some of the artifacts she found while dragging the lake outside of the Malone's cabin. Being out on good behavior is definitely not going to stop Emily from starting trouble again, though. She has a job to finish after all. With the dogs happily living with Sally now, she can't exactly try that scheme again. So, what's a girl to do? Oh, right. Take a book out of the Malone page himself. Take a page out of the Malone book himself. Go with me. Clearly, Tucker and Emily are going to start laundering money through her shop. She'll get away with it for a while because her probation officer doesn't think she'd be that bold. But ultimately, she'll probably get caught. If she doesn't get caught, though, she will 100% be coming after Nancy for revenge for soiling her plot in the first place. Ghost Dogs 2, keep on truckin'. Anyone? Bueller? Before there was even Ghost Dogs 1, we know that Malone the dogs had shown up before. So, who did they come after that time? My lore is that it was actually one of Emily's family members, and that's how she ended up finding about the Malone cabin in the first place. How easy would it have been for Emily to go scare in her family and then convince that family member out of love that they needed to leave because clearly it wasn't safe, and clearly they should move to the other side of the lake where they can't see what she's doing on that side of the lake, and they should never ever go to that side of the lake because it's dangerous. That'd be so much better. I mean, she's already got one partner she's got to split the money with. She would not want to add on a family member as well and make it a three-way split. No way, no how. And it would have been at least a decade ago, and not to be a total Debbie Downer, but dogs, they aren't actually the ghost dogs, and unfortunately we have not found a way to help the dogs live forever. So this means that even before Eddie, Meryl, Bruce, and Cher, there had to have been another set of Rottweilers that Emily used to scare the original person, possibly family member, out of the cabin. Maybe that's what those paw print tombstones in the cemetery were about. So, where did she get the newest 4 from? Puppies from previous dogs. And what if those puppies are just descendants of the original ghost dogs? Ghost puppies! So, even though they aren't the original Malone dogs, they are all distant descendants, and history beautifully repeats itself by restoring Malone's dogs back to the Malone cabin. And who better than to have bred those dogs than the Aker family themselves. William Akers, although they never really warmed up to him, did keep the Malone dog safe after Malone's arrest. Eventually, they become mostly a wild pack of dogs, but after a few years, puppies end up coming out of the woods because, well, that's cute. It makes me happy. Imagine looking for Malone's lost gold and finding puppies instead. Totally fine with that trade-off, you. William's family then took on the breeding and the raising of the Rotties for the next few decades until Jeff decided not to carry on the family tradition. To go completely opposite of everyone else, he even adopts a blue-tick coonhound, Yogi, to make sure that there are absolutely zero ties to his family history. I mean, he lies to us about it. So it makes sense that he doesn't want to raise Rottweilers. He doesn't know what sort of, family history that he's going to get slandered about. Anyways, the last round of puppies ever bred by his family are the ones that Emily adopts. But he wanted so little to do with his family history that he didn't even realize that Emily was the one who had adopted the dogs until after Nancy catches Emily. Speaking of Jeff, did you know that despite being a stickler for the environment, Jeff has a vanilla frappuccino obsession and is constantly filling up the dumpster behind the ranger station with his to-go cups. He is terrified that someone is going to notice his obsession and call him out on his environmental hypocrisy, so he never tells the workers his real name and goes by a variety of aliases so that all the names on the cups are random that are in the trash can and no one can actually blame it on him. It's not his fault though. This was before bringing your own reusable cup was allowed, and the man just needs his sweet toothpicks. Oh, sorry, you want to know something silly about Emily too? Well, actually, she's terrified of mice, which is why she never ends up finding the gold herself, because she can't seem to get too far in Malone's cellar when it comes to opening that safe behind the wall. Every time she hears those deer mice squeaking, she flips her lid and gives up. Just imagine her thinking she's this close to the gold and gets completely derailed by a couple of squeaks. Emily also really loves bugging Jeff Akers and has been leaving little rubber ducks in random places around the park and in the ranger station to drive him insane. She's been doing it for several years, but only once every few weeks or so she's never caught. It's not consistent enough for her to get caught. It was her way of getting back at him for telling her she couldn't drag the lake. Nothing made her happier than hearing his feral screams across the lake in the mornings upon finding another one. He finally realized it was her upon her arrest, because they stopped. Though, it randomly started back up a few months later when Emily was still in prison, and he's been trying to figure that one out. Let's see, what else? Oh, because it's 2002, Jeff Akers' favorite band is Nickelback. Clearly. Don't come at me, they had some catchy songs back in the day. And Red Knott, Tobias, he knows every word to Vanessa Carlton's 1,000 Miles. What else is he supposed to do all day while stuck in witness protection? He also watched every single episode of American Idol, but he was rooting for Justin instead of Kelly. Sorry. Can we talk about the fact that not only did my favorite Nancy Drew game, this one, come out in 2002, but also one of my favorite Disney movies, Lilo and Stitch? Alright, people, sound off. Out of Jeff, Tobias/Red, and Emily, which one do you think watched Lilo and Stitch and loved it? Alright, let's take a break from 2002 and go back to the 1920s. Ghost Dogs is one of the reasons I love the idea of a speakeasy. And this speakeasy is dog-themed. It was like it was made for me. Speaking of, how did Mickey end up being known as the dog person around Moon Lake? Well, thanks for asking. It all started when he was about 10 years old, so roughly 1899 or so. Little Mickey wanted nothing more than a dog, and his parents just would not comply. But this only made him more determined. I don't know if you know this, but someone telling Malone that he can't do something doesn't stop him. Mickey actually ended up stealing his neighbor's dog when he was 11, but ultimately had to give her back once his parents found out. So he couldn't get a dog this whole time, living back in, I don't have my notes pulled up right now, but I think it was New Jersey or something. So he used to live back in New Jersey or somewhere around there, and he moves to Pennsylvania around the time he was in his 30s. So he moves to Moon Lake and very quickly adopts 4 adult Rotties to protect his land. but he 100% ends up becoming one of those dog dads who baby talks to their dogs and tucks them in at night. I know that I end up singing all sorts of made-up songs about Lilo to her, and Instagram reels have taught me I'm not the only one that does this, so you cannot convince me that Malone did not have special songs for each one of his special Rotties. My Lucy lies over the moon lake. My Lucy lies on a crashed boat. Or, and the Iggy Wiggy doggy liked to lay on the porch. If someone walked by, he gave a loud bark. These are going to be stuck in your head all day now. You're welcome. And going back to the picture where he got arrested, and yes, it's too old and too faded to tell, but he definitely had doggies on his pajamas. That's not even fake lore. That's just got to be canon now. But what did happen to the doggies after Malone's arrest? According to the lie that William Akers sold, they ran off into the woods, never to be seen again. But we know that isn't true because William tried to follow them around to be led to the treasure. It wasn't as easy on the dogs, though, losing their owners like that. With how heavily they were bonded with Malone, no one could come close to earning that type of loyalty to them, so they turned inward and found loyalty with each other. Lucy ultimately became the pack leader, even though she wasn't the oldest, and took on the role of making sure the other three were okay and fed. At some point, she births a litter of puppies, which is what William ends up taking care of and ultimately goes on to breed other Rotties with, as we discussed above, that ends up becoming the ghost dogs that were Emily's first round of ghost dogs, and then eventually Bruce, Cher, and the others. It actually ends up being Lucy who causes the dog leash law to go into effect at Moon Lake. As if anyone was going to be able to leash her in the first place. Cue Born to be Wild in the background. I don't want to get too deep into what happened to the dogs at the end because no one likes a movie where the dog dies. So we're just going to end the discussion about the dogs here. But do know that they, excluding Iggy because he liked to lay on the porch, did act like little terrors at night whenever they could. So the idea of them haunting the Malone place wasn't that far-fetched. Let's end this video by being silly and spreading some rumors. I heard Jeff Akers is always on eBay looking up skunk figurines. That man is weird. Well, I heard Emily Griffin has a collection of those creepy old dolls, and they have names. Actually, Red Knott got arrested for singing 1,000 miles at the top of his lungs in the bathtub. It's illegal to sing in the bathtub in Pennsylvania. Look it up. Well, okay, let's be fair. He only really got a citation from Jeff Akers, but still, it was the first citation that Jeff ever gave out that everyone else cheered for. And that's it for fake lore for ghost dogs. Some were silly, some were plausible, and some were absolutely ridiculous. I still need to know which character became obsessed with Lilo and Stitch. And I want to know what's your fake lore for ghost dogs. Drop it in the comments below. Have another idea for a video? Let me know in the comments too. If you like this video, consider giving it a like and giving me a follow. You can also find me on Instagram under the same name. Thanks for sleuthin', y'all.